Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah.
Welcome to the Prophetic Picture. My name is Mike Avalon, and this is my friend Shabazz. Shabazz, I am so excited about this program today because we're going to talk about Islam and Bible prophecy. And our last program, we went through the lineage and the history of Abraham all the way down, and now we're going to pick it up and we're going to look at it from a prophetic angle. And I think this is very interesting because the world is actually looking at prophecy right now as we see the conflicts that are going on in the world and the unrest. You put your finger on any spot in the world and there's unrest. But the world is looking at the East and seeing how things are going down. And so today's program is going to be very insightful for us to be able to see what is it that prophecy really says about this subject today.
Yeah, absolutely true. And, Revelation's prophetic picture of Islam is probably one of the most significant studies we can have during these sessions that we are together here. And it will give us a concise look at what God has to say, about this movement, about Islam. Let's face it, 1.5 billion people in the world are Muslims. And,
you can't ignore it.
No, you can't ignore it. And God has spoken to that in the Bible. I've had many Muslim friends say that, the Bible talks about Islam and the Bible has predicted Islam. In some ways I have to agree with them. But it's only in the book of Revelation that we hear anything about Islam. Yeah. And specifically in chapter 9 of the book of Revelation.
That's right.
And there are several trumpets in the book of Revelation that speak about different events that lead up to this final great event of Jesus' second coming. But those trumpets, why don't you give us a little synopsis of these trumpets and what the Bible says in the book of Revelation?
Well, first of all, it's important to note that we are both historicists when it comes to the understanding of the prophetic book of Revelation, and Daniel also, and all the other prophetic minor prophets. And so when we look at the seven trumpets, there's seven of them. And what happens during the seven trumpets, there is a process of what's happening to Rome. I'm going to look at that in a second. So if we just go to Revelation real quick here, and let's just look at this real quick so we have a foundation of where we're going. And we look at Revelation 8, and in the 7th chapter, it talks extensively about the first trumpet being blown. And we don't have time to go into all the details today, but just to give us a foundation, the first trumpet is Alaric the Goth. And as we look at this, every trumpet that's being blown is chipping away at the Roman power. It's chip away. And the next trumpet is Alaric the Vandal, and then Attila the Hun. And we're going to go back and talk about Attila the Hun because it's something very specific that we'll be talking about him later in the program. And then in verse 12, it talks about the Heruli. So we have the Ostrogoths, we have the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, the Huns, and the Heruli, and they're chipping away at Rome. But then something changes. And what does that change? We got trumpets, we got 5 trumpets, and now 4 trumpets, and also we got something that's really radical that happens.
That's right.
And it's called the 3 woes.
That's right.
So now we have trumpets and woes.
And that coincides with the last 3 trumpets.
That's right. And so we're going to talk about these 3 woes. Pretty much we're going to be focusing on the first woe today.
That's right. That's right. And so these trumpets are blown successively, one after the other.
Right.
And there's an angel assigned to each trumpet, and when they blow the trumpet, a great event takes place. And each event deals with the chipping away of the Roman Empire, the pagan Roman Empire, and eventually leads into the papal Roman Empire, which is being chipped away. And we'll see clear down through the line of history. And prophetically, we see that it brings us all the way clear to the time of Christ's return, his second coming, and the judgment of the world. I mean, the end of the world. And as you mentioned, we want to specifically focus on the fifth trumpet and the first woe, because the fifth trumpet has a woe, and that's the first woe. And then we have the sixth trumpet with the second woe, and then we have the seventh trumpet, which has the third woe,
which is the final one.
That's right. And I want to submit to our viewers that the fifth and the sixth trumpet deal with Islam, specifically deal with Islam. The rise of Islam and the consequent progression of Islam and its expansionism in the world, and ultimately we come to the sixth trumpet dealing with the rise of Islam through the 13th century, dealing with the Ottoman Empire and so on. But specifically today, we want to talk about the rise of Islam as it was predicted in the Bible. And that is significant. That is very significant, because this will help our viewers to see the accuracy of the Bible. And where we are in time.
How close we are to the second coming.
Absolutely. This is a fascinating study. I'm excited about it. So I would like to just perhaps maybe read the verses that coincide with the fifth trumpet.
Okay.
And let me just scroll down here on my right there, and I will start over here. This is chapter 9. I'm going to read the very first 12 verses that deal with the fifth trumpet.
Okay.
And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion, when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of these locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. Pretty intense, isn't it?
Very intense, yeah.
And
no wonder they call it a woe.
Yeah. And the text continues, and they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there was stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woe more hereafter. So we just looked at a quick rundown on the first 12 verses of Revelation chapter 9.
And there's a lot going on there.
There's a whole bunch going on there. I mean, and all of it is symbolic. Our viewers must understand and take this into consideration, that I know most of them are aware that the book of Revelation is a symbolic book, but that the Bible defines its own interpretation. It gives us its own meaning of these texts, and we don't have to look anywhere else to find out what the Bible is teaching.
And one of the principles of understanding prophecy is that when something seems abstract, you know it's prophetic. If something seems literal, then you can take it literal. In this case, there's a lot of abstract stuff going on here.
A lot of symbolism. And here's a breakdown of what we just read. A star falls to the earth. As the start of the text, a star falls to the earth. Number 2, the star has the key to the bottomless pit. Number 3, it says that there was a king over the abyss who was a destroyer.
Right.
That's very interesting. We'll talk about that later. Number 4, the king opened the abyss and smoke came out, which brought darkness upon the land. Number 5, locusts came out of the smoke whose shapes was like horses prepared for battle. And number 6, these locusts were to hurt men 5 months. And that's significant. We'll talk more about that later too as well. And number 7, the special attacks were to be against those who had not the seal of God, against apostasy. Then this must be clearly comprehended that this particular woe is focused against not the entire population of the earth, though it is a global movement, yet it is targeting people who do not have the seal of God. And really, we need to talk about the seal of God as well to clarify what does the Bible mean when it talks about the seal of God. Okay. When we get to that question, we'll deal with it. But meanwhile, we need to continue and just look at some of this symbology here and decipher from the Bible what these symbologies, these symbols mean. So the prophecy, Michael, commences with a star that falls to the earth. That's what the Bible says.
That's right.
Revelation 9:1. And once again, I read that text. And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Now, the question I'm sure most people are asking, what does a star mean? What does that represent? What does it mean? I mean,
a lot of people immediately, when they hear the word star, they think angels. You know, we talked in our last program about the star that led the wise men. We never actually said what that star was. It was the host of heaven, as we know later on, because all of a sudden the sky splits open and all the angels start singing and praising God that a Messiah has come. But a star doesn't always necessarily mean an angel.
No.
Now, it's interesting, though. The word angel is angelos, which means messenger.
That's right.
And so a message can be brought by an angel. A message can be brought by a man. And it can also be brought by God himself.
That's right.
So we have to be careful. We have to read, when we read star or we read angel, we got to make sure we read it in context to make sure that we know what it's talking about, not just leaping of logic, making leaps of logic and trying to figure it out by not studying line upon line, precept upon precept, Isaiah 28, verse 9 and onwards. It repeats it over and over again that we have to look at the great preponderance of truth.
That's right.
And then draw our conclusions from that.
Well, so you know, we see that happening in the Bible, that in some cases God himself brings a message. In some instances, we see angels bringing messages, and in many instances, we see chosen men that are messengers of God that bring a message from the Lord, such as his prophets or the apostles and the disciples.
That's right.
Of God, and we see that is absolutely crucial.
In Daniel 12, it says that those that are faithful and true, they will shine as the brightness of the firmament as the stars.
That's
forever
right.
and ever.
Amen.
So here's another connection. Oh yeah, and also Jude. We're going to talk about that.
We talk about that as well. Well, as you said, a star could represent a spiritual leader.
Yeah.
And we see those that happen in Revelation chapter 1, verse 20, and Daniel 8:10.
Yeah.
We have examples of that where a spiritual leader was called a star.
Yeah.
We also have where the Bible says angels, Revelation 1:20 and 12:4. And also Job chapter 38, verse 7 talks about angels being stars. And we also have Jude 13, as you mentioned, where false leaders or spiritual, whether they're spiritual or political, but false leaders are also called stars.
Yeah, they are, according to Jude.
Yeah. So we have a wide array of
Lucifer is called a star. Jesus talks about he saw Satan fall from heaven like
absolutely. Like
so
lightning.
This is like lightning. This is interesting.
That's right. And in Revelation 12:7 talks about the dragon being that's Satan.
Yeah.
Drew a third of all the stars down with him, and those are the hosts of heaven, the
That's
angels. A third of them were drawn down with his tail. He deceived them. So we see that a star could have a many different definition, but it's always a messenger.
Always.
Whether it's an angel or not, and it could be a false messenger as well. So it says that the star fell onto the earth. And, well, let's find out what earth denotes in this particular context. You know, looking at it from the angle that we are looking, you know, because it says that it fell upon the earth. It doesn't give a specific geographical location where it fell. It just says it fell onto the earth. So this denotes a global movement, not just a regional one, not just a local movement, but not limited to borders, but it's a global, worldwide movement. Something happens worldwide.
Now, if it was a geographical location on the earth, it would be very specific
That's
about
right.
that. And since it's not, but there is a text that talks about it being geographically located, the star that falls. The
Yes.
star that falls.
Yes.
And we were talking about Attila the Hun. And in that episode, the star falls, but it falls on what?
If so, on the rivers.
Yeah.
And let's for the sake of the viewers clarify something here. As you mentioned, Attila, that's in Revelation chapter 8, verse
Right.
10, and that's talking about the third trumpet.
That's right.
And he's talking about one of those trumpets that was chipping away the Roman Empire. Attila, the king of the Huns, was a barbarian. He was a vicious king.
Oh, yeah.
The Huns, they attacked the Roman Empire from the east, but coming through the current Russia. They moved westward,
and then down.
and they came down, and anything in their path was destroyed. Anything in their
mercy.
path, no mercy. And it was a local movement, because the Bible says, I saw a star fall to the earth unto the rivers. At this point, it just says it gives us a direction saying that it's a local geographical application and not a global application. This star, however, in Revelation chapter 9, verse 1, the fifth trumpet star, has a worldwide application, a global application, and which is incredible, because we see the accuracy of the Bible once again.
You know, most expositors all agree, most of them all agree about Attila the Hun.
That's right.
What that star application represents.
Exactly.
But when all of a sudden we move into the first woe, all of a sudden some people take leaps of logic and try to get out of that. And it's like, the Bible's not confusing like that.
No.
What God builds in one place, he doesn't just go flip it.
No.
And so principles of understanding prophecy are very important that we follow them.
I think we're going to tackle that issue in just a few moments,
Right.
about these two different views of Attila and all that
Very
you brought
good.
up. Absolutely. And so in this context, again, it's the earth. And so, but the big question, bigger than what a star represents and what earth represents, is who is this star?
Oh,
That's the biggest question. That's the question of the century, probably. And who is this star? And let's look at it as we dig into the Bible, as we look at, let the verses talk. And you know, I don't know if it's been your experience, and it's been mine, and I'm sure you've had that same experience. When you ask people who this star is, the very first person they say, who is that person?
Lucifer. And
Satan.
then he became Satan and he fell.
Yeah, they say
Makes
Satan.
good, you know, on surface, when you look at the surface, it's like, it's an easy one to draw to. But we have to be careful, again, that we look at the context of the verse.
And you really,
Especially the time it's happening.
that's right. And you really can't blame the people for thinking, because the language could imply that it is Satan, but the context doesn't. And as we open up the text more and more, we see that it's not talking about Satan, especially as we get a little bit towards the other verses here. Let's continue a little bit here, and we'll see. One of the reasons that it doesn't fit Satan as the character that fell, it says the star fell from heaven onto the earth, is that the book of Revelation is a prophetic book. When John wrote the book, was he looking back or forward?
Well, in Revelation 1, it says, Jesus makes it very clear that these prophecies are going to begin right now. Don't look sometime way off into the future like some of the futuristic interpretations do. They say they put things way off into the future. Some of them put way back in the past. No, he says it's happening right now.
That's right.
And so when did Lucifer fall? He fell way back here
beginning of
at the beginning. But here is something happening
But yeah, John is
Toward the end of
making a
Revelation.
prophetic statement here about an event that had not yet taken place or transpired.
Right, it's a prophecy.
And many people take Satan's fall and put it right here in Revelation chapter 9 and say, this is Satan's fall that's been talked about. But
In Revelation
not.
12, it does talk about Satan, but it tells when it happened.
That's right.
It
That's
puts
right.
it in its right place. With this, it doesn't.
And and even the tense in Revelation chapter 12 is a past tense, talking
Yeah.
about Satan withdrawing his tail.
Right.
So Satan's fall took place before the creation of this world, and we know that biblically. And Jesus himself in Luke chapter 10, verse 18, he said, what did he say? He said, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven.
There you go. Yep.
And that's past tense. How did Jesus behold this? Was he there?
No, he sees this.
But was he there when
No.
when Satan
Well,
fell?
of course he was there.
Of course he was there.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this for the benefit of some of our viewers who are probably not that are not familiar with Christian teachings and doctrines, that put Christ in the same level as humans and say, well, Christ had a point he was born, but Jesus is the one who kicked him out of heaven.
Of course, that's Michael the Archangel.
That's right.
And there's this great battle that takes
And
place.
Jesus says, I was there. I beheld him fall to the earth. And Christ just clarifies that for us. And so I have no doubt in who Jesus is. And I would invite all of our viewers that have not known Christ in a way that they should perhaps, that to look at the text, look at the scriptures, read them and study them and get more familiar with Jesus and understand who Jesus really is.
But when Jesus was in the flesh, he's looking back at that
Absolutely.
that event.
In this event in Luke, he's looking back and saying, I beheld,
Yeah.
I saw it, I was there, I saw him fall to the earth.
Yeah.
Back to Revelation 9 verse 1, and it says, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Now, we're still talking about Satan here. Remember in Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 3, an angel comes down and bounds Satan towards the end of the world. Right? Towards the end of the world's history, Satan is bound for 1,000 years.
1,000 years.
He's bound in chains and thrown into the pit.
And we know those chains as circumstance.
That's right. That's right.
He has no one to tempt, so I mean, figuratively, it's like being chained up.
Those chains
Yeah.
are figurative.
Yeah.
But he's bound for 1,000 years.
That's right.
Now, was he ever given the keys to the chains?
Well, that's kind of ludicrous.
Wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
Imagine I break the law.
Uh-huh.
They arrest me and the sheriff puts me in prison.
Yeah,
and said, by the way, here's the key. And the bathrooms are on the corner there. and I am, hey, I got the keys, man. Wait till he falls asleep.
Doesn't even make sense.
No. So this star falling to the earth and the keys given to him and falling to opening the bottomless pit.
Right.
No, Satan is bound in the bottomless pit. But this star is given the keys to the bottomless pit.
Oh, there's a big difference.
Big difference. Big difference. Let me just read that text and those 3 verses in Revelation 20. And I saw an angel come down from heaven. This is in respect to Satan being bound for 1,000 years. This angel had a key of the bottomless pit and a great chain. Remember, notice this angel did not fall. It says, I saw an angel come down from heaven. In Revelation 9:1, it says, I saw an angel fall to the earth from heaven. It says, I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, the old serpent, which is the devil, and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up. Does it say anything about giving him a key?
No.
No, nothing at all. So we are. So we can. And
again, this
conclude.
event takes later on.
Absolutely, and the Revelation 9:1 is a future event in perspective to where John was standing
That's right.
in first century AD. So it's clear that Satan is not the character spoken of in Revelation chapter 9 verse 1. Well, if this star is not Satan, who is it? Now here's the $2 million question. If it's not Satan, who is it? Well, Mike, as you know and I know, there are at least 2 opinions out there today to the identity of this star.
Yeah.
And I think it would be fair that we kind of mention both of them and then make a conclusion.
Okay, but before we do that, I want the viewers to know that this subject is not a salvation issue. We're not to squabble over this. This is just something for us to look at, but we shouldn't divide over it. So as we talk about this, just take the information, study it for yourself, and then draw your conclusion.
That's right. And hopefully your conclusion will be a biblical one. I mean, in the sense that what the Bible is saying.
Or tradition, don't go by
understand,
tradition.
Because at the end, when it all is said and done, we want all to be on the right side, on
Amen.
Christ's side.
Amen.
That's where we want to be.
Right.
So there are two different schools of thoughts here. And the very first one, interestingly, is that a lot of Christian theologians, modern theologians and some from the past, believe that it was Muhammad, the prophet of Islam. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, is the star that fell from heaven to the earth.
Well, there's a problem with that already.
Yes. You and I don't agree with that.
We don't agree with that.
No.
And the reason, if you don't mind me saying this now, I think we need to hit it right on, is that to say he was a star that fell from heaven, you would have to say that a lot of them think, actually they're saying this, is that at a time Muhammad was a Christian and he fell from grace and started something different.
Yes, that is what they're saying. That is what they believe, because the word heaven in Revelation chapter 9 verse 1, the original Greek meaning has several meanings: expansion, heaven, sky, the abode of God. And the minor meanings at the bottom of the list are Christianity, gospel.
Yeah.
So they take these last meanings that are the weakest.
Yeah, they're weak in the concept.
And they apply it to the character of this star and say, well, see, then it must be somebody who used to be a Christian and fell from grace. And Muhammad is the one that fits that, they say.
But there is no history that backs that up.
Absolutely not. And it's not, it doesn't follow biblical hermeneutics either, because the third trumpet has another star that falls to the earth, and all Christian theologians, both in the 19th century and 20th century, and now in the 21st century, the majority of Christian theologians agree that the star that fell in Revelation chapter 8, the third trumpet, was Attila, the king of the Huns, that we already mentioned. Right. And it says that he also fell from heaven. But there, they don't apply the hermeneutics accurately, because there they say it doesn't mean heaven in a sense of gospel Christianity.
But it's the same word.
But it's the same word. And if you're going to follow the biblical hermeneutics, we must... The text has to be consistently agreeing with each other. You cannot move away from it.
Right.
So it can't be the Prophet Muhammad in this sense. Although Revelation 9 talks about Islam, something else gives way to the rise of Islam.
There you go.
Someone else. And what is the second person? King Khusro. King Khusro of Persia. He was a contemporary of Muhammad, and he lived during the exact same time that Muhammad was alive. And we'll talk about, and this may sound, what do they mean by a Persian king gave rise to the Islam? No, he didn't start Islam. No. He was not responsible for the start of Islam. But series of events transpired dealing with him and his empire that consequently gave way to the Muslim expansionism.
Okay, for example, I have a tree. I have trees on my property, and one of the trees I had to cut down because it was dead, and it was full of bugs and everything. When I cut it down, I had a tree specialist come, an arborist come, and he looked at it and tried to figure out what happened to make that tree die, and we found mold in it.
Yes.
When something is starting to implode or decay or whatever, then all of a sudden the animal kingdom realizes something's weak and they attack it.
Yes.
And we see that as far as animals go, we see that happen. And so here, Khusro, something's happening to him. His kingdom is starting to fall apart, and all of a sudden someone takes advantage of this kingdom starting to solidify.
That's right.
And this is where all of a sudden the transition takes place.
That's right, and that's you led us exactly to where we need to go, because that's what we're talking about at this point, and Khusro was exactly that link, in a sense, that gave way to the expansionism, not to the rise of Islam,
No.
to the expansion of Islam,
Right.
and let's look at that right now in detail. And let me just scroll down, because I have a lot here to share. We covered some of these things. We were talking about the king of Attila, and we were talking about the prophecy of the third trumpet, and Attila being the star that fell to the earth, the connection there with the star that fell in Revelation chapter 9. But, during another thing that I want to say, during the first phase of Muhammad's ministry on earth, he was new on the scene. He was new on the scene of action. He was an obscure prophet. He was not very well known or very well liked, and if they and just not very famous at that time.
His following was very small.
Very
right?
small
Yeah.
following, and so he could not have been this, in that sense. Also, could not have been that star that fell to the earth, and. But as we said, something else happened that gave rise to the birth of the Saracens, and King Khusro came on the scene just around the same time that Muhammad was on the scene. In fact, there were two empires that stood as barriers against the expansion of Islam from the south to the northeast and to the northwest. Look, the entire Arab Peninsula, south of modern day Turkey,
Right.
and and west of modern day Iran, and east of North Africa, down all the way to the Red Sea, and all of that was Arab. All of that was already under the control of the Saracens. And the Saracens were the very first Arab movement. But King Khusro to the east, northeast of the Arab Peninsula, and Heraclius, the Roman Empire, to the west, these two powers kept the Islamic forces from expanding. But something happened in history that gave way to the rise of Islam and their expansionism. See, these two kingdoms, these two empires,
Like
the
a dam.
Romans and the Persians, were bitter enemies.
Yeah.
And they were battling it out all the time. And it wasn't until around 630, somewhere around there, 629, 630, at the Battle of Nineveh,
There you
when the Persians lost 50 of their standards to the Romans. With their army well nigh defeated and annihilated, the Persians had to retreat, but even then they were overcome. And the Romans, though the Romans were a little bit weaker, they managed in this battle to basically defeat the Persians. But the Romans, in the process of defeating the Persians, lost their own strength and vitality. By the time the battle was over and the Persians were defeated, the Romans had been reduced to a small force.
Right. And so what happens is that there was a vacuum that was created,
A vacuum.
and it had to be filled, right?
That's right.
So
And what happened was that before the Saracens went after the Romans, they saw that the Persians were completely gone. They went right in. They went right into Persia, and Khusro basically was assassinated by his own generals. He lost his life, and at this point, a new monarch was put in place. However, be as it may, the new monarch, with all his effort, was not able to withstand the Saracen invasion. And they basically, in a short time, took the entire Persian Empire over. And it was the defeat of Khusro that was the key in the hands of the Muslims to expand. That is the key that the Bible is talking about in Revelation chapter 9.
and the history fits exactly perfect.
It fits it.
And
Absolutely.
then later on in the second woe, we see a time prophecy that literally falls exactly right on time, which proves that everything before it was on timing. The
That's
timing
right.
was right. And so that's very interesting. And we'll talk about that some.
That's right. And so let's continue a little bit here more, and we still have some time left to finish this. So let me talk about Muhammad and Khosrow being contemporaries. They lived around the same time. And, we don't know when King Khosrow was born. We don't know the date of birth for him. However, we know that he became king in 590 AD. Muhammad was born in 570 AD. And 610, when Muhammad was 20 years old, Khosrow became king. 610 AD, Muhammad is 40 years old. At this time, he has his first vision. He now has become officially the prophet of Islam. And in 628 AD, Khosrow is assassinated. He dies. And Muhammad's death happens in 632 AD, when he was only 62 years old. So this is a timeline that is important because they were contemporaries.
Right.
And that's another evidence of the fact that Khosrow was the key that opened the way for the Muslims to expand and move all over the world. Basically, the expansion eventually led all the way to India, and then on the west they went all the way all of North Africa and parts of the Central Africa and into Southern Europe, Portugal, Spain.
Yeah.
Even in Portugal and Spain, they still have mosques.
Yeah.
They still have mosques. But converted to churches, of course, because the Europeans later on took back the territories from them.
Very interesting.
Yes, and so the Saracen expansionism started in 630 until 632 AD, and again it was shortly after the fall of the Persian king. And we know that according to historians that up to 632 AD, Persians were Zoroastrians. They worshipped fire. And after that, suddenly there's a shift in the religious views, and they become Muslims. Because the Saracens forced them to convert. They told them if they don't, they will be killed.
So there's a change with Muhammad in the way that he is growing.
Yes.
Like you told me, we talked before, he's unpopular, but all of a sudden now he's popular.
Yes.
So there's something changed here.
There was a change. They call it when Muhammad was in Mecca versus when the time that he was in Medina. The Mecca years, Muhammad's fame was very little. He made very little progress as far as proselyting people. But then by the time the Medina experience came, Medina is another city somewhat north of Mecca in Saudi Arabia. By the time the Medina experience came, he moved his entire army, everybody, they moved over there. They actually took Medina. There, he suddenly got a lot of supporters. And he grew in strength, grew in power, and was able to achieve a lot of their expansion through that experience. In Revelation 9:1, we continue. It says, "And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." How about we talk about a little about that, the bottomless pit here, and what is the word bottomless pit in
Abuso.
Abuso?
It means it doesn't have any foundation. You look at a desert, for example. That's a good example of something that has no foundation. Even Jesus talks about, don't build your house on the sand.
Yes.
Build it on the rock.
That's right.
This is what this word is meaning. So it's very interesting. It's almost literally saying something very direct. That this movement is arid.
In a place, well, it says Abusos, it's also geographically fits to the T. Look, it's in most places where the word abyss is representing the Bible, it talks about, for instance, in Genesis. Genesis chapter 1, the word abyss is used there, referring to Earth's desolate condition before God created vegetation and all that. When God created this world, there was only water. Later on, there was the earth, but it says the earth was without form,
and it was
and void.
Yeah.
And the deep It says all of these, the word abusos there in Hebrew is being used, and it means formless, in devastation. There was nothing.
Right.
And it says that in relationship to the Islamic power, it says that the key to the bottomless pit was given to them. With that bottomless pit, bottomless is abusos.
Right.
And for instance, we know in Genesis chapter 1, let me read that verse. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form. And the word form there is tohu, which means desolate, and void. And the Hebrew word there is bohu, which means ruin, empty. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the word deep there is tehum, which means abyss. So the earth in its desolate condition is an abyss.
Yeah.
And the key of the bottomless pit is given to this power, and it says that these locusts come out of this bottomless pit. But this was and still is the condition of Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of Islam.
Yeah.
I mean, Saudi Arabia is a wasteland. The entire country is just one vast desert. They don't have places like with evergreen trees and forests and all that. They do have palm trees and stuff, but not, you know, they have oases and stuff, but not large, vast areas that are arid and green and all that. So even we know that some historians, Gibbons, for instance, a famous historian, in his book Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, I'm going to quote him. He says in page 315, paragraph 2, he says, "But in the dreary waste of Arabia, a boundless level of sand is intersected by sharp and naked mountains, and the face of the desert without a shade or shelter is scorched by the direct and intense rays of the tropical sun. Instead of refreshing breezes, the winds, particularly from the west, diffuse a noxious and even deadly vapor. The hillocks of sand, which they alternately raise and scatter, are compared to the billows of the ocean, and whole caravans, whole armies have been lost and buried in the whirlwind." So Gibbons tells us this is the condition of Arabia, and fits the description of what the Bible says. So what happens next, Mike? In Revelation 9:2. Chapter 9, verse 2.
It says, "And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as a smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit." This is very interesting because smoke, now we're going to be looking at smoke here a little bit. Smoke has a lot of different definitions also in the Bible. When we look at the sanctuary, the smoke represents the prayers of the saints going up. These smoke but this is a noxious, something very poisonous.
And it dilutes the atmosphere. And,
you can't even breathe.
The sun, it covers the sun.
So there's no light, and we know that when light is taken away, in Bible prophecy, light represents the truth. The light, you know, and then darkness comes. This noxious vapor comes and darkens everything. And we know that when truth is taken away, then heresy comes in, and it's darkness.
That's right.
But in this case, it's noxious even. It's
That's
deadly.
Right. Well, in the 40 times that the Bible uses the word smoke, most of the time it refers to God's wrath.
Yeah.
But it also talks about, smoke also talks about falsehood as well. Like you said, truth is shielded, covered by the smoke, and we see this darkness. Truth is covered, and people are in darkness. That's what it's talking about. And God's wrath.
Yeah, and this is what happened during the Dark Ages when Christianity was mixing with paganism. This whole thing happened again, where the light was shining through burlap, if you will. And that burlap was allowed a little bit of light to get out throughout that time of the Dark Ages from 538 to 1798. But here, this seems to be like total blackness.
Yes, absolutely. So that the very existence of the sun is threatened, in a sense. Now, what's the next scene in here? The next event is Revelation chapter 9, verse 3. and it talks about the locusts. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. You know, Adam Clarke, another famous commentary says that the locusts, they are vast hordes of military troops. This description certainly agrees with the historical description of Muslim armies.
I mean, where do you find these large populations of locusts?
Well,
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's like the
geographic-
Bible is just literally pointing.
That's right.
Geographically, this is the place.
That's the place. Look, locusts are obviously a symbol of the Arab.
Yeah.
They must be. And in this prophecy, 4 symbols are represented. And I'm going to share those one by one here. The first one is locust.
Okay.
The second one is the scorpion. The third one is the lion. And the fourth one is the horse.
Wow.
And all of these 4 creatures in their natural habitat are Arabian. The Arabian horse.
Famous Arabian horse. Yeah.
And
there
you know
go.
that Middle East was dotted with lions. Lions are not people. When you talk about lions, people always talk about Africa. But you know that until just recent history, middle of last century, Middle East still had living lions in it. The male lions had a smaller mane than the male lions in Africa, but physically they were the same size.
Let me tell you something. I've rode Arabian horses. They are an incredibly intense horse.
Hot-blooded.
Very much. I mean, you have to really hang on.
That's right.
So yeah, and these guys knew how to ride them.
That's right. And so these animals are all symbolically what? The locust, the scorpion, all of them are Arabian. It just fits.
And we
the
know it's
description.
symbolism because it's all these. It's a mixture of all these animals together.
right.
So we know it's pure symbolism.
Even Gibbon says in volume 5 of his book, he says that the zoology of the hieroglyphic or the symbolism, they are all Arabian. Even Gibbon, one of these commentators and historians, agrees with this interpretation of the Bible.
Wow.
And so the Bible employs the locust as a symbol. Now we talked about Gibbon, we talked about these historians, but why don't you read the next verse in Judges chapter 6 verses 3 to 5. There we read what the Bible says about the Arabs being locusts.
Okay, that's good. But now we're doing line upon line, precept upon
that's
precept.
right.
Okay. And it says, and so it was when Israel had sown that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites, and the children of the east, and that's there it is, even they came up against them, and they encamped against them, and destroyed the what?
The increase of the earth.
Till thou come unto Gaza.
And then the next
it's-
verse, it says, if you continue the next verse, and
No
so there's
sustenance of
suspense.
Israel, yeah, neither sheep nor ox or ass, for they came up with their cattle and their tents. Ooh, there's a good one there, tents. And they came as grasshoppers for multitude, for both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land and to destroy it.
And you know the Hebrew word there for grasshopper is locust.
Locust.
And when you and I both have seen documentaries where locusts attack an area.
Oh, man.
Can people number them?
No.
They come in vast numbers by the millions.
Actually, it looks like a wave.
That's right.
When you see them
Innumerable.
moving,
That's right.
it's just moving like an ocean. You don't want to be in the way of it.
No, and the fantastic thing is that we talked about what the commentators say, but here's the Bible saying it.
It's agreeing with it.
Bible saying that the Arabs are like locusts in numbers when they came against Israel. And then again in Judges 7:12, I can read that for you. It says, and the Midianites and the Amalekites, now if people doubt, here's another text that says it. And all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude, and their camels were without number, as the sand of the sea at the seaside for multitude. So
Now you have 2 witnesses. You have the 2 witnesses that the Bible says you have to have to make something that
2
you
or
can
3.
build on. 2
That's
or
right.
2 or 3 witnesses, all things are established.
That's right. We gave
So,
2 witnesses.
all you
right
need
here.
really is 2.
That's right.
And they're very strong.
That's right.
And they are pointing to the correct
And we saw that
interpretation.
some theologians, very well-known theologians and historians, saw this as well in history.
This is not something that Shabazz and Mike have drummed up.
No. This is not what we have. No, this has been in the Christian doctrine part of the Christian doctrine for some time now, for at least 1.5 century.
Right.
The Christians have understood this. And let's move to Revelation chapter 9, verse 4. We're really getting short for time here, and we want to cover the rest tomorrow.
Okay.
Or when we are on next. I'm not sure what the date is, but the next time we're on, we'll cover the rest of the program. Let me read that for you. It says,
Okay.
verse 4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass, the locusts. It was commanded them that they should not
That's
hurt
the
the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. This is a fascinating prophecy. It is fulfilled to the T, and I'm going to show the history of it right now.
Okay.
Okay, let's dive
do
into
it.
that, Mike.
Let's go for it.
Okay, you know, Abu Bakr, he wrote a letter to the Arabian tribes shortly after he succeeded Muhammad. Muhammad had passed away at the age of 62 in the year 632. He passes away. Abu Bakr is chosen to take his place. Abu Bakr is now the head of the Islamic tribes. He sends a letter to his Islamic tribes and gives them this warning. Let me read that. This is
amazing.
That's right. It says,
Yes.
when you fight, quote, I'm quoting him, when you fight the battles of the Lord, acquit yourselves like men without turning your backs, but let not your victory be stained with the blood of women and children. Destroy no palm trees, nor burn any fields of corn. Cut down no fruit trees, nor do any mischief to cattle, only such as you kill to eat. Remember the text said, let me read the text again. And it was commanded, verse 4,
Right.
that it was commanded them, the locusts, that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which not have the seal of God. So here Abu Bakr gives the command, don't destroy any trees, don't destroy any fields, don't take anything except that which you need to sustain yourselves with.
Which is very commendable.
That's right.
I mean,
Very
you look at this
commendable.
guy, it's interesting, but he wasn't always that way, was he?
No, I don't think so, but very commendable.
But very commendable in this
That's
case.
Well,
Something
because-
happened.
Because God had ordained it.
That's right. That's
God had
exactly what
ordained
happened.
this. That's right. God had ordained it before 600 years earlier in the book of Revelation.
This is the way it was going to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
And let me read the rest of the letter dealing with those who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads.
Okay.
And I'm continuing the letter now. And as you go, you will find some religious persons who live retired in monasteries and propose to themselves to serve God that way. Let them alone and neither kill them nor destroy their monasteries. And you will find another sort of people that belong to the synagogue of Satan, who have shaven crowns. Who is he talking about, shaven crowns?
Well, in history, the only people that I know that have shaven crowns are monks.
Monks, Catholic monks.
And later on, they stopped shaving their head and they just put the little beanie
That's right.
thing. But that's a symbol of the moon.
That's right.
That's the pagan symbol of the moon god, and that's why they shave their head in reverence for
That's
the moon.
right. And here he says, but you will find another sort of people that belong to the synagogue of Satan, who have shaven crowns. Be sure you cleave their skulls and give them no quarter till they either turn Mohammedans, in other words, they either become Muslims, or pay tribute. So the command was, don't destroy any green thing, but go against those that don't have the seal of God. That's what the Bible said.
Yeah.
But who were those that did not have the seal of God? Abu Bakr says those are the ones with the shaven crowns. Kill them. So the people of God who have the seal of God are spared.
Let me tell you something. During the Dark Ages, when the papacy in Rome was going and killing everyone that didn't go along with them, God had a bulwark. Many times, this history proves that God's people were delivered
That's right.
by the Mohammedans.
That's right. In this,
Very interesting.
That's right. Very interesting. And we'll see that more when we talk about the Ottoman Empire. Yes. So by implication, those who have the seal of God are spared. Those who do not have the seal of God. In this way, it seems to me that the Muslim forces were used by God as a scourge.
Yes.
As a scourge. Did God ever use any other nation as a scourge?
Babylon too.
Babylon. Was Babylon necessarily a religious believing in the true God?
Terribly paganistic.
Idolaters.
Yes.
But yet God used them to punish Israel for their disloyalty to their God.
Yeah, and by default, Nebuchadnezzar wrote a whole chapter Daniel 4, you know, it's amazing. But, you know, here's a Babylonian king, most likely he'll be in heaven.
That's right. So if God uses the Babylonians to punish his people and the Persians to bless his people through Cyrus, he could use the Muslims to punish those who do not have the seal of God. That's what the Bible is saying. I didn't say that. You didn't say that. We're just saying what the Bible said.
Yes.
Right? Well, friends, we have come to the end of another program, and we really enjoyed this time with you, and we hope that you've enjoyed it, and that you will tune in again and watch the future programs that we are preparing for you. May God bless you, and we'll see you again soon.